You walk up a flight of stairs. You feel your heart beat a little faster. You go to the gym 3 times a week. You're proud of it. You think you are roughly as strong as a human being is supposed to be. The average modern adult walks around 5,000 steps a day. The average member of the Hadza, a hunter-gatherer group in northern Tanzania, walks somewhere between 11,000 and 17,000. A Roman soldier on a standard march walked over 45,000. But for 99% of human history, this didn't exist. No gyms, no diet plans, no couches, no elevators, no chairs anyone could sit in for 8 hours. For 200,000 years, every single human being on Earth moved more in a single day than most modern people move in a week. So were our ancestors actually stronger than us? By how much? And what happened to make us so much weaker? The answer is more measurable, more recent, and more humbling than most people imagine. Let's start with the most embarrassing study ever published in modern anthropology. In November 2017, the biological anthropologist Alison McIntosh at the University of Cambridge published a paper in the journal Science Advances as part of a project funded by the European Research Council called ADAPT. McIntosh and her team had done something nobody had ever bothered to do directly. They had CT scanned the arm and leg bones of women who had died 7,000 years ago during the early Neolithic and compared them in fine detail to the same bones in living women. The comparison group was unusually demanding. It included sedentary Cambridge students, recreational joggers, university football players, and the elite rowing crew of the University of Cambridge Boat Club, women who train at Olympic-level intensity 6 days a week. The results were almost unbelievable. The arm bones of the Neolithic women were 11 to 16% stronger than the arm bones of the world-class rowers. They were nearly 30% stronger than the arm bones of the typical Cambridge student. A woman who had spent her life grinding grain on a stone mortar 5 hours a day, lifting children, carrying water, and harvesting crops by hand, had upper body bone strength that no modern female athlete on Earth could match. The paper was, in effect, a quiet declaration that the strongest female arms of the modern world are weaker than the average female arms of a Neolithic farming village. Decades of professional training, scientifically optimized nutrition, and elite coaching cannot match what a daily life of grinding wheat between 2 stones once produced. Then the same team in Cambridge went much further back. In 2014 and 2015, the anthropologists Habiba Churchier, Tracy Kivel, and Brian Richmond published a series of papers showing that the bone density of modern humans has been falling, slowly and continuously, for roughly 7,000 years. They compared the bones of pre-agricultural hunter-gatherers from across Europe and Africa to the bones of farmers from the same regions a few thousand years later. The hunter-gatherers had bones whose internal structure, called trabecular density, was comparable to that of modern orangutans, animals that spend their entire lives climbing, dragging, and wrestling their body weight through the trees. The farmers, by contrast, had bones that were about 20% lighter. That is roughly the same amount of bone an astronaut loses after 3 months of weightlessness in space. The decline was not caused by diet, it was caused by activity. The simple act of giving up the hunt, settling down, and shifting to farming reshaped human bone in a measurable way, and it kept reshaping us, generation after generation, for the next 5,000 years. By the time you reach the Roman period, the human skeleton looked broadly like ours. By the time you reach today, your bones are the lightest in the entire history of the human lineage. The skeleton you are walking around inside is the most fragile model of a human body that this planet has ever assembled. It is impossible to talk about ancient strength without talking about the Neanderthals. For almost 350,000 years, our extinct cousins lived in Europe and Western Asia. They never had agriculture. They never had cities. They never sat down for anything resembling a workday. Their skeletons are some of the most over-engineered objects in the fossil record. They have thick walls of cortical bone, broad rib cages, and muscle attachment sites so large that they show up as visible ridges on the bone itself. Anthropologists estimate that their grip strength was roughly twice ours. Their arms were shorter than ours, but vastly more powerful. Their legs were built like compressed pistons, and the reason they had to be that strong is in the animal bones beside theirs. Neanderthals hunted woolly mammoths, steppe bison, and woolly rhinoceros with short, fire-hardened wooden spears, which means they walked up to within about 3 meters of these animals and stabbed them in the chest. No modern professional athlete could survive a single day of the average Neanderthal's life. Their bones were not just denser. Their entire bodies were shaped by the constant possibility of being kicked, gored, or crushed by an animal 20 times their own weight. But the most disturbing fact in this whole story is that none of it is genetic. Since the 1960s, anthropologists have been quietly documenting one of the last hunter-gatherer groups left on Earth, the Hadza of northern Tanzania. The Hadza do not lift weights. They do not have personal trainers. They do not eat protein bars or follow training plans. And yet, when researchers strapped fitness monitors to Hadza men in their 20s and 30s, the numbers came back almost impossible to read. Their estimated VO2 max, the standard measurement of cardiovascular fitness, averaged 56.7. That is higher than the average professional UFC fighter. They walk between 11,000 and 17,000 steps a day. They engage in 75 to 100 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity every single day, which means they hit the World Health Organization's weekly exercise recommendations in under 2 days. The result is that cardiovascular disease is almost non-existent in their community. Obesity is under 5%. Type 2 diabetes is essentially unheard of. They do not have these advantages because they are a separate species. Their DNA is the same as yours. They are simply living the way every human on Earth lived for almost the entire history of our species. They are the control group. They are what you would look like in terms of bone, muscle, and heart if your body were used the way it was designed to be used. The Hadza are not stronger than you because of luck. They are stronger because they get to keep using the body you have been quietly retiring since you were a child. Now look at what civilization expected of its soldiers, even thousands of years after agriculture had supposedly weakened us. The standard Roman legionary at the height of the empire carried roughly 30 kilograms of equipment in addition to a full set of armor that added another 10 kilograms on top of that. According to the late Roman military writer Vegetius, the standard march for a legion was 20 Roman miles a day, which works out to about 30 kilometers, completed in 5 summer hours. Forced marches reached 25 Roman miles, or about 37 kilometers. And after each day's march, every single legionary helped dig defensive ditches, plant wooden palisades, and erect a fortified rectangular camp in which the legion slept. The next morning, they took it all down and did it again. They did this for weeks, sometimes months, and were expected to fight a major battle at the end. The average Roman foot soldier carried out every day a physical workload that would put most modern marathon runners on the floor. And he was considered ordinary. The empire was full of him. And then we sat down. Not all at once. Slowly. The first humans to sit at a desk did it maybe 5,000 years ago in the scribal schools of Sumer. The first humans to sit at one for 8 hours a day did it about 150 years ago, when industrial offices became common. The first humans to sit for 12 hours a day appeared roughly 30 years ago, when computer monitors, cars, couches, screens, and food delivery converged into the modern lifestyle. Your body is 200,000 years old. Your daily routine is younger than your grandparents'. Your bones are still being shaped by the same biological feedback loops that built the Neolithic woman's arms, but the load is gone. The signal is gone. The chair tells your skeleton every day that strength is no longer required, and your skeleton listens. It thins out. It loses density. It quietly downgrades itself toward the lightest, weakest version of itself it can survive at. That is not a moral failure. That is biology behaving exactly as it should, in conditions it was never designed for. For 200,000 years, every human being on this planet walked, climbed, hunted, dug, ground grain, carried children, dragged carcasses, and built shelters with their hands every single day. The Neolithic woman with arms a Cambridge rower could not match. The Neanderthal who walked up to a mammoth with a short wooden spear. The Roman legionary who marched a marathon every day with armor on his back. The Hadza hunter who outruns modern UFC fighters without ever entering a gym. They were not stronger because they were genetically different. They were stronger because they had no choice. We do. We sit, we drive, we elevator, we delivery app, we chair. And every single one of those small modern decisions is a tiny signal to your skeleton, your muscles, and your heart that the load is over, that the day is finished, that you can stop being a human animal and start being a passenger in your own body. The gym helps. It does not undo it. The deficit is too old, too compounded, too constant. The most uncomfortable fact in modern biology might be this. You are descended from some of the strongest creatures the planet has ever produced. And you are walking around inside the weakest version of their body that has ever existed. Not because something happened to you, because almost nothing happens to you at all. The strongest version of you is waiting under all the comfort you have built. You will probably never reach it, but every day you move is a day you remember it was there.